I didn't know, oh, God's going to open the door back up again. And he did, and he did in a big way. But sometimes we just have to have that faith to allow ourselves to go and grow through our waiting season so that he can get us to our promised land.
Hello, and welcome to the Shifting Culture podcast, in which we have conversations about the culture we create and the impact we can make. We long to see the body of Christ look like Jesus. I'm your host, Joshua Johnson. Today, we step into a conversation about dreams, about purpose and faith with actor, author, and speaker Edwina Findley Dickerson. From her early days at the Duke Ellington School of the Arts to the challenges and breakthroughs of Hollywood, Edwina has learned what it means to listen for God's voice, navigate seasons of waiting, and step boldly into her calling. Her new book, The World is Waiting for You, blends spiritual insight with practical steps, helping us discern our God-given dreams and live them out with courage and intentionality. In this conversation, we talk about hearing God in the middle of crossroads, surrendering our ambitions while still planning with vision, and finding purpose that runs deeper than achievement. Whether you're in a season of momentum or in this quiet stretch of waiting, Edwina's story will encourage you to keep pressing into the larger God dream of your life. So join us. Here is my conversation with Edwina Findley Dickerson. Edwina, welcome to Shifting Culture. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to dive into The World is Waiting for You. You're really talking to dreamers. You're talking to people that's looking for their God dream, to find their purpose and to live that out in the world. So I want you to take me back into Washington, D.C., the Duke Ellington School of the Arts in high school. What was percolating for you? What was your dream? What were you starting to dream of?
Yeah. Well, if anyone's seen the movie Fame, you'll get a little bit of a taste of what it was to grow up at Duke Ellington. It was singing, dancing, acting all the time. We were unbridled artistic children doing grand jetés through the halls and singing, operettas in the bathroom and, choral singing on the bus. That was just who we were. Tap dancing on the sidewalks. We just could not be contained as far as our artistic energy. And I'm still just so grateful for the staff and the teachers and just it's a DC public school. It was a public school at the time. I believe now it's a charter school. But the fact that they had a vision for these, young inner city youth that they believed had gifting and had talent and had purpose, enough to really invest in us and invest in our education and to see us flourish. And so every chance I get, I go back. In fact, I might just be there 2 weeks from now. I just got a text from them last night saying, I saw your Oprah interview and we want you to come back again. I know you just spoke at the commencement, but can you come back again? But that means a lot to me because I know where I was, right? As a young girl with the dream of being in the arts. And, it's beautiful to have a dream manifested.
You dreamed of a life in the arts. It's not an easy thing to start to walk that out and to say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to actually get paid for this. I'm going to make a living at it. How did it move from a dream of Edwina as a child into something of, hey, this is finding my purpose and this is my God dream?
Yeah.
What does that look like for you?
Yeah. When I was 16 years old, that was the first memory that I have of hearing God's voice. And it was at a time where I was really seeking God about what my life was going to look like and become. I was in that crossroads of coming out of, about to come out of high school and about to start, applying for colleges. And, oh, what does that look like? Am I going to go a route of becoming a doctor or a lawyer? Or am I going to just step out on faith and take this huge risk with my life and pursue the arts and go to college for that? And so I was really at a crossroads. I was getting a lot of different advice from the adults in my life that was very conflicting. And so in the midst of that, I said, God, I just need to hear you. Where should I go to school and what should I study? And I heard him say to me that he was going to send me to school in New York and that I was to go into the arts as a career. And so that's what gave me as a young person that assurance that, okay, if I step out on faith, because this is a huge faith move, that God is going to be there to back me up.
You talk about two different things in your book there that you just talked about. One is hearing God's voice and the importance of God's voice, and two is taking huge, bold faith moves, right? And so both of those things are important. One of the things that I say in my life, my quote is I like to say is listen to Jesus and do what he says. Like that, if you could just do that, I think you're going to be set in life, right? Hear God's voice, you step out. I think a lot of people, they're either confused that this is God speaking, or they hear God and they don't want to take a bold faith move. They just want to just stay where they're at. How do we start to discern God's voice in our life? How do we start to know that this is God speaking to us?
Well, to be honest, a lot of the times when I've heard God's voice the strongest is when I have been willing to give up the most. When I've been at the end of myself, when I have fully surrendered and said, "You know what, God?" Like, there were seasons where I was like, "God, do you want me to give up acting?" There are people that said, "You should be a minister. You should go into the ministry." I know this acting thing is nice, but really, you should be a pastor. And I just remember just crying out to God, like, "God, I thought you told me entertainment. But if you didn't, I'm willing to go whatever way you would have me go." Like, I'm really literally willing to lay it all down. And I find that when we get into that heart posture of really seeking God and getting to a place where, you know what? Yes, I have my own desires. Yes, I have my own dream, but I'm willing to submit it under your dream. If you just reveal that to me, there's something about that heart posture that keeps us open to actually hearing what he has to say and not getting it so confused as far as what we have to say. And then there's times too where he may give instructions that look like the opposite of what you want to do, of where you want to go. I've experienced that many times where the instruction I'm being given seems so opposite from like where I want to go. But by practicing that obedience of following the instruction, turns out who knew that it was going right in the direction that I was hoping to go the whole time. But sometimes he'll put these steps in front of you, as he did with the children of Israel, to test your heart to see whether you're willing to keep my commands. And normally it's as a prerequisite for that promised land, right? And so we don't realize like there's an incredible promised land that's in front of us, but it does require instructions and adhering to the instructions.
Give me an example in your life. So as you moved one way, you said, okay, I heard God's voice. We're moving this direction. This is my God dream. These are the steps I think that we're supposed to take. I put my vision down. I have my vision board. I
Yeah.
have all my goals written down. And then God gives you different instructions and you follow that. What did that look like for you? What's an example like that for you?
Yeah. So in the book, I talk about the waiting season, right? And different things can trigger you into a waiting season. For me, it was I had already created my vision book. I had already created my companion goals book. I was feeling very excited about the world, and I was just coming out of NYU and had big dreams as an actress. And then this opportunity came, this acting opportunity that came with a lot of money, a lot of prestige, flew me first class to Hollywood, stretch limousine. It was just like so opulent. It was amazing. It was beyond anything that I had experienced to that date. But it came with a nudity clause attached to it. And I didn't expect that, and I grieved that because I was like, I don't, I feel like that's going against my convictions. God, how could you take me all the way to the promised land, but then have this caveat, right, presented to me And it was very difficult. It was difficult. I did not have a lot of money. I did not have any prestige or clout, and here I'm being offered all these things, but it came, with this attachment that I just felt in my spirit that God was not leading me in that direction. So by not signing that, it kind of triggered me into this waiting season all over again. But the beauty of it was me seeing and discerning, oh, that's what this is. Like, we're going into a season. It became clear to me that I was not to fight against the season. I was not to try and like make a whole lot of things happen. Like, okay, that didn't happen, but let me try to get all these other things. And that's my natural tempo. I'm ambitious, I'm a go-getter. And so it really took the Holy Spirit to say, this is a time where I need you to sit down. You're going into a winter season. I know you've been afraid of that because you've had spring, you've had summer, you have enjoyed being outside. And now I'm calling you to hibernate. And now I'm calling you closer. And now I'm calling you into a more intimate relationship. That's not marked by external success. And so I had to even reframe my own perspective of my identity. Like, what does that look like to be worthy, but not active, right? Or not what I would feel productive, but it was more so a receiving. And so, when I write it in the book about the waiting season, a lot of times God gives us that time to hear from him, to recalibrate, to, in that season, so many things, spiritual things and personal things happened. I learned my purpose. God gave me revelation about the Hollywood industry that I was entering into. So many prophetic words and revelation. I met my husband during that time, started an organization during that time, and really became passionate about service. And so service really became the bedrock of everything, and frankly, so many of the revelations in the book came during that waiting season. And so, I didn't know, oh, God's going to open the door back up again, and he did, and he did in a big way. But sometimes we just have to have that faith to allow ourselves to go and grow through our waiting season so that he can get us to our promised land.
A lot of us hate that waiting season because, right, you're an achiever, you're a go-getter, you're a mover and shaker. So you want to actually make this happen for you. I think a lot of people, when I'm looking at, I'm manifesting my own dreams, I'm doing something I'm the one that is going to get me there. But you're actually reframing some things for us and saying that you're doing this with God. And one of the things I really like about your book is that you're talking about your purpose is not just your next initiative or the actual thing that you do, but there is a deeper purpose to your life that no matter what initiative or work that you're doing, you're actually living that purpose. How have
Yeah.
you reframed that and found the purpose that you're living and not just the work that you're doing?
Welcome to The Balance of Gray. I am your podcast host, Steve.
What exactly is The Balance of Gray?
It seems to be a rising voice in Christian podcasting. The Balance of Gray. I'm not sure if you've heard of it or not.
It's called The Balance of Gray.
Balance of Gray.
And how do we have this peace in a world that's falling apart, distracted with tickled ears and a form of godliness yet denying its power? Because we have the Holy Spirit. And folks, if you don't, Jesus says, behold, today is the day of salvation. Now is your time for redemption. Do not wait on this. I'm telling you, you'll have a peace that surpasses all understanding. Find The Balance of Gray on Apple, Spotify. We're on just about everything out there.
Ooh.
Yes, that's such an excellent question, Joshua. For me, it was in that waiting season that revelation came to me, because I realized that, okay, this season is not marked by all of the, kind of big goals that I have, the professional goals and the financial goals and, like that type of, as you would say, achievement, right? But what it did was get me closer to the heart of God and realize that the heart of God is way more than achievement. that and then it also allowed me to see and understand that purpose transcends a job. Purpose transcends an initiative. Purpose transcends, you know, an occupation, or in my case, a show or a movie, right? These are all individual expressions, hopefully, of your divine purpose. But I always say to aspiring actors and artists and creatives, I always say, who are you when you're in between jobs, right? Like in our occupation, it's not a 9 to 5. It's not, you come and then you work for 40 years and then you get your pension and then you leave. It doesn't work like that. We're going from show to show, project to project, movie to movie, stage to stage, and so there's all kinds of time in between. And so does that mean that you are simply not operating in purpose because you're not in a show currently? No, your life is much more valuable than that. And so when I began to lean into what is as an actor, we a part of our process of identifying characters is identifying their super objective, right? And so there's these acting techniques that interestingly I think really do apply to life and even spiritual life. When you're creating a character, you look at, okay, what is the character's super objective that flows throughout this entire movie or show, right? And then each scene is its own individual objective, right? And so I began to see that, oh, you know what, in life, I believe even our lives with God, that we're giving a super objective, that there's this God dream that covers our entire life. But each of these, we have chapters and we have scenes and we have moments, right, in between. And I think the hope is that we can continue to make our moments reflections of the grander God dream.
We want to say that grander God dream is there. How did you start to find it? Like what does that look like for us? Like I have lots of different dreams. What you're talking about is greater purpose and identity, more than just a specific goal that we have. So
Yeah.
how do we find it? Like I think we're all looking for it.
Yeah.
Help us out.
Yeah, sure. In the book, I talk about unlocking your calling, right? And discover, like in the book, it kind of takes you through some very practical steps, some questions that you ask yourself, questions that you ask God, that you really take out time and carve out time to do some soul searching, right? And a part of that is really identifying the giftings that you have, the things that you may take for granted, that you may just do all the time and you don't even realize you're doing it because you're doing it all the time. But sometimes it's not until you see yourself, in conjunction with someone else, or even be able, like in the book, I suggest that people have conversations with the other people in their lives. Like, in your eyes, what makes me special? In your eyes, what makes me different? Because we don't always see it in ourselves. And so, like, for instance, I had an aunt who all she did was bake, 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 bake from scratch, and and in her eyes, that's just so normal. That was so normal for her, right? And for me, who never bakes, I'm like, oh my gosh, Aunt Muriel, oh, I love her cooking. Oh, every time she comes around, she just warms our hearts, with her delectable delights, right? And so she didn't really realize, like, the incredible, like the grand, this was a wonderful grand dream that, I mean, can go in so many directions as far as her baking and pies and cookies and cakes and, all these things, right? But it was just so normal for her. And so I think all of us have these special, what I call in the book, your superpower, right? That you can lean into once you've really identified that, and then being able to explore what else, right? What else can I do with this? Where else can I go with that? And I think also that we have to lean into our why, right? Like I write in the book about your holy discontent, and part of that is what keeps you up at night, what makes you angry, what gives you joy, what is affecting your emotions in a way that you're being drawn to it. And so I find that even when people complain a lot about one particular thing, It's like all you hear them do is complain, complain, complain about this one thing. Now I say, I need you to lean into that because it's very possible that your calling is directly connected to that one thing. And it's very possible that that one thing is a part of your holy discontent, right? And when I say that, I mean it's a righteous indignation. It's a righteous feeling of unsettled. I'm unsettled with this and I wish someone would do something about it. Right? But sometimes that someone is you.
Exactly. Exactly. One of the things that I love your stories of what you say in your book and then, interviews that you've given, just the way that you walk in the world, you really receive prophetic words, you give prophetic words. Prophecy is a big thing in your life. One of the training sessions I do for people is to figure out how to hear from God and then to actually say what he's saying to other people. Is we have people sitting in chairs, their eyes are closed, and we basically do like a musical chairs type thing. And then I have them pray, ask God to hear something for the person in front of them. They have no idea who it is. And then they open their eyes and they share it. So it's just starting to train them to hear from God. And I've had so many people in tears crying, like these words resonate, like people are starting to
Mhm.
hear from God. What is the role then of prophetic words and prophecy for you in your life? How do we like receive them and give them without being so fearful that this is coming from us, we're not
Yeah.
hearing God right?
Yeah.
People don't follow his word very well.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that's a big question, right? And it's not really a one size fits all answer, but I think maybe having disclaimers may be good, right? Like, I'm feeling this really strongly. If this resonates with you, take it. If it doesn't, I also understand, but I'm feeling led to tell you X, right? And giving the other person that opportunity to say like, "Okay, that resonates with me," or "It doesn't resonate with me," or "You know what? Okay, thank you." Right? "Thank you." Like, there's been times in my life where immediately I know what a person has shared with me is absolute confirmation, because God already sent 5 people before them to tell me that message, and he was already telling me that message in the shower that morning, right? So it's like just confirmation, and some people feel that that's what prophetic words are, just strictly confirmation. But I will say that there have been words that I've received where I was like, "No, no, no, absolutely not. That is not me. That's not what I want. That's not what God told me. That's not what God showed me." And then suddenly, he'll send 5 other people with that message. And I'm like, "Wait, no, get away from me. What are you talking about? That is not confirmation. Not only is it not confirmation, I don't want it." But for me, it's the repetition, right? It's the repetition of the word or the sign, or the revelation that makes me say, "Okay, God," especially if it's something I hadn't been paying attention to before, that makes me begin to surrender and just go to God directly, because that's another thing. It's like God can use each of us to speak to one another, but ultimately he wants to be the person that we go to, right? And so yeah, there've been some things like that where when I surrendered and actually invited those things in my life, changed my life in the most wonderful way. But I just wouldn't have known had I not surrendered, right? Had I not surrendered to the word, even if it was something that I didn't think I wanted, right? And it's like by surrendering to God's plan, like, "Okay, God, you're making it so clear that this is your plan, but that's not the way I want to go." And then I finally go that way, and it's like, "Oh my gosh, like I could have missed this. This is so amazing. I can't believe I could have missed it." So, you asked about the role of prophecy in my life has really been a major guide. There's decisions that I've made that I would not have known to make had I not had a word in advance about it. So by the time it happened, it was like, "Oh, this is the direction I'm supposed to say yes to this." I don't necessarily personally understand it all, but I know that's what God said. So let me move in that direction. And each time I've done that, it's come with tremendous blessing on the other side.
I think that's sometimes really hard for people, is to actually notice that this is happening and notice the signs that God is speaking to you to move you in a specific direction. And I think in our attention age that we live in, and everything is vying for our attention. We're pretty bad at focusing on something like the
Yeah.
signs God is giving us.
Yeah.
How can we slow down to actually see the signs, to pay
Yeah.
attention to the signs, to know where God is leading?
Yeah. One thing for me, I talk about this in the book. Chapter 5 is the secret power of hearing God's voice. And I really start encouraging people, no matter how busy you are, even me, I have to apply these same principles on a regular
Yep.
basis. And I do not always do a great job of it.
Yep.
I'm in a season right now that is incredibly busy. I've been on a world tour as far as the book. I have multiple interviews right after this, and started 6 o'clock in the morning, but then have two little children and they had to get to school and have a husband. There's a lot happening. And so, one of the things that I say for myself and that I also encourage in the book is like really disciplining yourself to spend time with God and carving out that time, because it's not just gonna happen. It's just not. It's not just gonna happen. You have to be so intentional. You have to be so into this, as intentional as you are about going to work, as intentional as you are about checking your email, as intentional you are as replying to your text messages, you know, is as intentional as we have to be to carve out time and say, God, you know what? In the midst of all of this, actually, your voice is the most valuable one to hear, and sometimes it can feel like we have so many things to do that we don't have time to carve out. But if we just kind of reposition that in the understanding, like in the book, I talk about the Pareto principle 80/20, the 80/20 rule, which essentially is of the 100% of the things in your life, only 20% of the things that you do are actually moving the needle for the other 80%. A lot of times, the other 80% is a whole bunch of busyness that is not actually what's moving, the needle. It's really that sliver, that 20%. And what I found when I take time to carve out with God, that He'll show me the 20%. He'll show me what are the fewer things to do that actually amount to the bigger picture. And I say also, like, one thing I do is go on prayer walks, right? Sometimes I have to just put it all down, shut off the computer, turn off the phone. In fact, leave the phone, right? Because if I take it, then I'll be on it. Leave the phone and literally just go on a prayer walk. And my husband has started doing that too. And there's something about that that's just saying, like, God, this time is for you. I give it to you, and also I ask that you will also give me your time, right? Like, actually speak to me in this time that I'm dedicating to you.
It all boils down to simple things: being intentional, spending the time, listening to God. Everything that you're doing in this book, you have these two threads that come together. One is your intentionality. Like, you're going to put, your vision book together. You're going to put your quarterly goals, your weekly goals. You're going to, like, these are the steps that I need to get to, whatever dream that God has put in my heart. Like, this is where we're going, and I'm going to get there. But then you also are like, hey, but we also have to surrender and trust God. We have to listen to His voice and actually go where He goes. How do we merge those things of
Yeah.
the intentionality and the vision that we have and the trust and surrender to God's plan?
We get The World Is Waiting for You. And we go through this, we go through each chapter. That's what we do. Honestly, like, so much of that question is what was poured into this book, because I know many, many, many people who are so strong in faith, are just incredibly strong in faith, and who are prophetic and who spend a lot of time with God, and who I just really believe have a gift of faith. But unfortunately, I've seen many people with a gift of faith that, it's been years and years and years and years and years and have not seen significant movement in their life in that direction. And then there's people that I know that are like go-getters, 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 who are very productive and very, and hyper successful and have lots of money and all of that. But then they have this other place that like, I feel lost and I don't know where I am in life and I'm not sure what my purpose is. And, there's these other parts of life that I've been wanting and I don't know why they haven't shown up. And so I just really felt like, you know what? And in some ways, I'm both, right? And I've had to come on a journey as a person of faith who also, has very strong goals, as far as success and all those success principles. And it's like, how do you meld that faith and success together? And that's really what a lot of what this book is, right? It's spiritual principles and it's practical principles. So even in that chapter, this time next year, chapter 10, and in that chapter, plan like a rock star, right? There's people that say, oh, if you want to make God laugh, show him your plans, right? And so it's kind of like an idea of like, I don't need to plan anything because my plans aren't going to work out anyway because God has another plan. But I sort of challenge that notion in the book. I say, well, didn't God have a plan when he created this universe? Wasn't it so specific, right? He had a project plan for each and every day. I'm going to create this on this day, this on this day. I'm going to wrap it all up on the sixth day, and then I'm going to rest on the seventh day. It was very specific. And even the times and seasons in our world, or even if you look at plants and agriculture or the woman's body, right? Where it's all operating according to time and seasons and a very specific recurring plan. So when you begin to look at God as a master planner, then it doesn't get you off the hook of not planning because I have faith. I have faith, so I don't have to plan. No, you make your plans by faith and in faith. Right? And so they come together. And especially, for those who may be listening who are prophetic, right? Like what I do when I get a prophetic word and I receive it, the next thing I want to know is, okay, God, what are the steps, right? What are the steps that you need me to take in the direction of, like I said, what I call a God dream? You may call it a prophetic word, you may call it a promise, you may call it just the word of the Lord, however you call it. What does it require of you to partner with God to see the fruition of it, to see the manifestation of it? Yeah, so it's really that journey, and so that's what I really encourage people who feel that tension right now to get the book, go through it, you know, really lean into it. And there's a lot of questions that the book invites you to ask yourself and ask God. And the expectation is that when you go through that process, that things are going to become much more clear.
Take me through just a couple of things that are holding people back from actually then planning and taking those steps.
Yeah.
What are people afraid of?
Yeah. So there's a whole chapter in the book about confront what's holding you back, because that's something that I've, again, experienced and also seen, over these 20 years of traveling around the world and having lots of speaking engagements and workshops and just connecting with hundreds of thousands of people, right? There's been patterns that I've seen as far as what holds us back for really manifesting the God dream that's over our life. Fear, I think, is probably number one. And then in the book, I break down different types of fear. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of man. Essentially, fear of man is, what are people going to think of me if I do this, right? Fear of failure. Well, if I really step out and I fail, then maybe that'll be worse than just not trying. Because if I don't try or if I don't put it out there that this is what I want, then I'll never fail, right? And so I've experienced many of those things. Also a lot of people, unfortunately, what thwarts them can be relationships, right? Relationships that perhaps they should not be in. And I've unfortunately seen that many times, especially with a lot of women. I've seen how the enemy has come in and distracted them away from the actual God dream that they were called to manifest. But there's these detours that we can start to take in life. And so, one of the things that in that chapter I really encourage is building up our wisdom and discernment about each of these different areas so that we don't invite into our lives something that's going to be a stumbling block. There's things like depression, right? That's real. Depression, mental health, that's very real, and that can really hold a person back from fully embracing the calling that God has. And so, everything that's holding us back is not necessarily external. Sometimes it's internal, sometimes it's things that we may not have a tremendous amount of control over in our own strength. But I encourage people, even in the book, like, if you need to have a therapist, if you need to have a counselor, if you need to go through a program, lean into the resources that are around you that can help you to move beyond this block, right? This thing that's holding you back so that you can flourish, right? Like, God is designed for us to flourish, and God's designed for us to live an abundant life.
Amen. What's your big hope for The World is Waiting for You? What would you hope the readers would get from the book?
Yeah, ultimately, I love seeing lives transformed. I love seeing radical shifts in people's lives, right? I love when people have those aha moments of, wow, this resonated with me deeply, or this has caused me to now make another choice. And by making that other choice, suddenly you open up yourself to a whole new level of life that you didn't even realize was a part of your reward and a part of your inheritance. So, I have an organization, Abundant Life University, and that's, kind of our goal, right? For to see everybody around the world live in their abundant life.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. A couple really quick questions at the end. One, Edwina, if you go back to your 21-year-old self, what advice would you give?
I think I would tell her that the end is good. The end is good, that there are some things that you have to contend with now, but just know that the promise that you're believing for on the other side will come to pass.
That's good. Anything you've been reading or watching lately you could recommend?
There are certain pastors that I really love. Like, I love Dr. A.R. Bernard. I was recently at his church last Sunday with the book. Quite a few people are in transition now, as far as ministries and age, and, are kind of passing the baton. And so, I talk about him actually quite a bit in the book. So I would say he and Dr. Miles Monroe, I think are just great examples of people who've been able to kind of bring together faith and, prosperity or success or achievement, those kinds of things in a way that still honors God, but encourages us to lean into our purpose. So, you know, those are just a few of the people that I would recommend.
Excellent. Well, The World is Waiting for You is out now anywhere books are sold. So you could go and get this fantastic book. Edwina, I loved it. A lot of fun. I just enjoyed being inspired to be able to actually live out the God dreams that He has actually put in my heart that may have been held back from one thing or another, and saying, okay, these are the steps that I need to take, and I need to start doing some planning. So thank you for this in my own life, and I know that it'll actually impact a lot of people. So hopefully go and get that book, The World is Waiting for You. Is there anywhere that you'd like to point people to connect with you? Any upcoming
Sure.
projects you want to look out for?
Yeah, they can go to theworldiswaiting.org. Theworldiswaiting.org has resources. There's aspects in the book that they can tap into. There's also a God Dreamers Academy that's starting for people who are going through this book and just really want, to go the next step of the journey, right? As far as implementing a lot of these things, I would encourage them to join the God Dreamers Academy. There's a connect page right there on that page, and they can fill out their information and connect with me. And then also, I'm very active on social media, especially on Instagram. I'm at Edwina Findley, so folks can definitely stay in touch.
Great. Well, I love following you on Instagram. Saw that you went to a little safari place in South Africa. My family went a couple years ago to the same
Oh, wow.
place. Saw the
Oh
little
my
cheetah
goodness.
run.
Yeah.
And we were there. I don't know. Did they have the crazy ostrich come out for you?
Oh, there was definitely an ostrich. Ostriches. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, that was fun. Oh, what a small
Yeah.
world.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So follow Edwina on
Lovely
Instagram
meeting.
and see those incredible things. So Edwina, this was fantastic. Really loved our conversation. So thank
Thank
you
you.
so
Me
much.
too. Thanks so much, Joshua. Have a blessed day.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Shifting Culture. This show was edited and produced by me, Joshua Johnson, at Shifting Culture Productions. If you're enjoying the conversations, consider supporting the work by subscribing at shiftingculture.substack.com. For as little as $5 a month, you'll get ad-free early access episodes and other exclusive content delivered straight to your inbox. I'd love for you to not just listen, but engage. Reach out, share what's resonating, and let's keep shaping culture together. Whether you're a listener with feedback, a creative with an idea, or a brand looking to connect with a thoughtful, engaged audience, let's talk. If you're interested in advertising on the show, I'd love to hear from you. Contact me directly for rates and availability. Until next time, let's keep shifting culture.